Hi, Artur. Thank you for being with me. How are you today?
Good. Hi, Alexis. Thanks for inviting me. Good.
Yeah, thanks. I'm super happy. So we're here at the No Code Week in Frankfurt. But it's been a while since we've been in touch. I've been using Softr and following what you're doing for a long time. And also I've been looking forward for this interview for a long time because I remember back in 2021, I did a little tour in Europe and I wrote you and Mariam because I was going through Berlin. And you were traveling, I think, at that time. So I missed you. And every time, I was always, okay, eventually we'll do this interview. So here we are. And it's great because so much has happened in the meantime. It's a different era. Can you just, to introduce yourself, tell me a bit about your background, and then we'll see how you came to launch Softr.
Yes, absolutely. And first of all, thanks for organizing No Code Week. It's really great event. And it's really exciting to see so many enthusiastic people and people that have been builders before also AI Wave and still continue to be a builder and, encourage others to become builders as well. So a bit of history. So I'm myself a software engineer. So I have been in software engineering field for more than 15 years, probably already 20. And I have been building software my whole adult life. And when we were building software, a lot of times we are repeating the same patterns, right? So most of the software building is very deterministic. You have authentication, you have lists and tables, and you have user profiles, and those are some of the fixed parts of any application today. And then there's a bit of business logic that is specific to certain applications. And while we were building those software in different companies, my co-founder is also from software background, Mariam has been software engineer as well. And we realized that we hire a lot of smart people as well. But then, we also ask them to build the same things over and over.
Yeah.
You go from one company to another company, you build another authentication, another REST API, another other thing. So it's all kind of repeating. And after 10 years, you feel like you are doing a lot of the same thing. Obviously, there are other challenging areas in software as well. I don't know if you are building software for the space programs and so on. Those are different types of problem, but many of business products and challenges are very similar in nature, right? So then we were thinking why shouldn't we have a platform that allows those things to be created, right? And we weren't even back then thinking to target engineering, and we are still not targeting engineering. Yeah. We were firsthand seeing while companies have core product team and engineering team, they build the core business. We have marketing teams, sales teams, and HR teams, and they have two options basically. Either they buy off-the-shelf software, which is very times has its very own way of working, so you need to adapt your processes to it, or you end up using inefficient Google Sheets and email and so on, back and forth. Fun story, before Softr, I was working at Zalando. I was at marketing organizations, so we had 100 plus size of marketing teams, doing influencer marketing, big campaigns with big brands and so on. And every account manager had one or two interns. And why it's so? Because you could imagine they were sending product pictures to influencers. Then influencers need to decide which products they want to take. And then they were shooting images, videos, and then people in the company side had to review them, feedback them, and redo it. And so all of that through Google Sheet and email. And you could imagine the mess that it could create, right? So, and every time we were approaching to get those things built, core engineering had bigger projects to do. So there was never time for these projects. And so all of this combined, the engineering repeating work and then the non-technical teams suffering, not having really solutions, kind of clicked. And then Mariam and I started Softr to enable these non-technical teams to create their own software, not to be dependent on engineering teams to build it for them.
So you started around 2020, 2021?
Yes, 2020 we started. Was good and bad at the same time. Yeah. So COVID happened right immediately. So it was very shocking and surprise, but we survived.
Yeah, and I think, so maybe it was there has been a lot of use, I saw in France at least, but I think it's everywhere, of no-code tools like Softr in times of crisis. One example I remember in France at least was at the beginning of the war with Ukraine. There were several, at least I remember one, platform that was built with Softr to put people in touch, to help Ukrainian people, things like that. But I think even maybe during COVID, there was also a few examples.
Yes, there were a lot of examples. I don't recall many of them, but Ukraine war had definitely many use cases that I personally know, even in some times like on a government level. So governments are slow, and they need to pull off such a project. They might sometimes need millions, but then like this gave them opportunity to within days, because they had to be fast, like create those software products, like connecting like people that have houses and people that were coming to the country to short term give it to them, etc. Like a lot of problems were solved due to the no code. And we still see that when in certain country there's a crisis like earthquake or something, like again there's a spike of usage, like people quickly use no code to create something very fast. So it's very interesting.
Definitely. Can you explain a little bit? We'll come back to usages because I think that's super interesting. But maybe how Softr works, at least in the beginning. I mean, it has evolved a bit. It's still like, I think, like the core principles, but like the way you imagine it, like all this, like the visual programming.
Yes. So like because our target has been non-technical people, so we think about them that they are very smart, they know their processes, day-to-day work, but they are not very efficient in software building. So we want to make their life easier, and for that reason Softr always has been like a Lego. So a lot of people use Lego, and so we give them the building blocks of software building, and that is like, okay, you need authentication. It's a couple of toggles. You toggle them on, you have authentication in place. You need a Kanban board in certain page to visualize the project's progress. You drop in a Kanban board there, and you connect to your source, and the source could be your existing HubSpot or your existing Google Sheet or any other source that you have, and then you have a working Kanban board. You need then to set permissions, like, okay, you go and visually set those permissions. So this is also even before AI. We'll, I guess, go into the AI part as well. But those has been the mental model of like a business people. So they don't want to deal with complexities of code and like a lower level abstraction. So we need to give them a higher level abstraction so that they can match to their business needs, because again, they are busy people, they have their domain. At the same time, we want to enable them to benefit from the efficiencies of software.
Yeah, definitely. I think the first data source was Airtable, or was something happening? Yeah, it was so this was, I mean, that's how I get to know Softr, I think, and there was a lot of enthusiasm, because at that time, Airtable didn't have any interface, and also very poor permissions, and it still is the case, actually. And so this was interesting. And the second thing that I found very interesting that people sometimes I think miss out is that then you build several source of data. Google Sheets maybe was the second one. And so one of the thing with Softr is that you can mix those data sources in an app. Which I found also super interesting, because Notion after was also, like, for instance, my company, we use both Notion and Airtable, but there's nowhere where we can have both data at the same time.
Yes, absolutely. So, like, if you look at every single team, they use a lot of tools like HubSpot, Google Sheet is like default, Notion, and so on. And we quickly realized that they need multi-data source kind of platform. You can't really build your application out of just one source. Like you often will need other sources. And Softr has been from the almost like get-go. Like Airtable was the first one, but then we quickly added a lot more, and we just enabled it to be plug and play.
How many is there right now? Data sources?
So at the moment there are 18 data sources, and one of the data sources is REST API. So if you effectively you can now connect to anything. And we are still adding new data sources. Like, it's not released yet, but the Salesforce is the one big one coming up, Microsoft SharePoint and Microsoft Excel. So this is a little bit of a new type of enterprises that we're entering, but those are the data sources that we're adding. And when we add data sources, we go do a lot of deep integrations, because sometimes when you use just the REST API, there are a lot of challenges with pure REST API usage. Like, there is rate limits, there is like problems with tokens and so on. Like when we integrate, we make sure that everything is taken care of again, because business people shouldn't be carrying.
Definitely. And you have also like more like technical, like SQL, data sources, things like that.
Yes.
Snowflake, maybe, I think.
Yeah, Snowflake is coming as well. We have all the other major SQL databases, and this also allows technical teams to use. To our surprise, we never target technical teams, but there are a lot of technical people using that as well.
Yeah, I'm not surprised, because you mentioned it earlier. Like, I mean, for a developer, it's boring to rebuild always the same things. So there are some frameworks, maybe they help you to do authentication, but still, I mean, sometimes you just want to go fast. So as you said at the beginning, Softr was primarily like taking care of the interface part of the triangle, I would say, to build an app. So you have interface, logic, and database. And then, so it started maybe 2 years ago, or when was it that you added database and the workflows? Can you explain a bit why you did that? What was the evolution?
Yes. So in the very beginning, even before Airtable, we kind of were thinking to do our own database from the day one.
Yeah.
But then, based on the user feedback, we realized that Airtable is a good candidate to even start with. So we started with that, and it took us 2 or more years to just be on Airtable and other data sources. And then over time, we learned from our users that many of them come to Softr. Like, I think number-wise, like 70% of people that were building on Softr, they didn't have already existing database in Airtable or in other places. So they were starting like new project, something that like, would be like a new, and the database needed to be created from the get-go. And so this gave us like the input that we need to do. That was input number one. Input number two was Airtable still was kind of big data source, but they started to create so many restrictions on their APIs. And I think the quality of API particularly degraded a lot, become like really slow and so on. And then people were complaining that, my application is slow. And we were like, Airtable API is slow, but they wouldn't care. So we realized that we need like alternative, and we need like a strong one. And we took all our learnings from all these data sources. And today we have a powerful database as well, no-code database similar to Airtable with certain differences. And then workflows, similarly, people were using Zapier and Make to connect the dots. And with workflows, there were two challenges particularly. One was people were just saying like, why would I now pay like for many tools? Like, can't I just do all this here? Because we had action buttons that were doing like one of things. Like, let's say if you are marking something done, it would just mark it done. But many times people wanted to send Slack message when it was done, right?
Yeah, so chain actions.
Exactly. So they were then using Zapier and Make and so on. But then the second problem was that because it's external system, it doesn't communicate to your application UI. So it's like in the background doing something, but sometimes you want to have a nice like a wait screen or communicate feedback like back and say like, thank you, this was done, and etc. Right? So we realized that those two are like the important input for us, and we always like had this vision of to be a full stack platform. Why would we just take kind of only interface layer? And we went ahead and built, and today we are a full stack platform. And I'm very proud that we spent time on interface layer, because I think that was the hardest layer. And we connected to like 18 different data sources, so we learned also so much that it was no brainer for us then to do the other parts. And like if you think about it, Airtable did the interfaces, Zapier I think almost killed it. It's non-existent, and Airtable is still like kind of a lot behind, and I'm not sure how they will continue. But like we have that power of like having all in a right place.
Yeah, it's interesting as you said, like in this triangle of those three pillars that you need to build an app. Maybe the interface has the more challenges, because it's also, I think, maybe where the users have the most expectations.
Yes.
Especially like non-technical users. And I remember one of the talks I really like so Softr has been a partner of the No Code Week of every edition, so thank you for that. And in Barcelona in 2023, we had Iker, sorry, I can pronounce, who talked about how difficult it was. So he was the head of design, how it was difficult to build a system for design that would be easy to use, which is like really the main core, I think, of Softr, that the app built with Softr would always be beautiful, and still some sort of customization. And I think Softr from the beginning allowed a lot of customization. And it was a great talk. I really liked it, and often thinking about it. So this was 3 years ago. Where are you with this? I mean, I've been following, but I would like to have your take on this.
Yes, it's a very challenging problem. We spend a lot of time building features. Like sometimes from engineering standpoint, we think that this is a quick, like let's say like you want to add date and time filter over the blocks, right? So you could quickly add those, but then we have a great product and UX people in the team, and then we would kind of brainstorm, and we quickly realize that we are not just building this for one application, for one use case. We build this for millions of use cases. So while one wants on a block level, someone wants on a page level. So they change the date and time filter. Everything below that page needs to reflect, or on a container level. So there are tons of variations that we need to take into account, and people always want like more and different use cases. So we are spending a lot of time just to find that right balance, which is often very challenging, and spend a lot of energy and effort to do that. And we do, in the beginning, we were like more smaller team and engineering driven, so we would add more control to the UI. So that on one hand would give like people to do variations that they like, but then every software app would look like semi-professional. Like, it wouldn't be like very solid design system based, and like someone from more professional field will look at that app. It would be maybe convenient, but you would have like a color combinations and borders and stuff like that. That wouldn't make sense. So then at one point with Iker and others, like we said, like, we need to really have our own design system. We kind of got inspiration from big players like Shopify and others that have open source design systems. So we look all of them, and then we do our own design system pretty much, and we try to find that right balance that it gives enough customizability, but it's not really creating like ugly looking applications, inconvenient applications, and so on.
Yeah, I think that's some people really don't understand this. I mean, when you're not from a design background, I mean, it's very hard to make something good looking, and it's better to lose a bit of control, I think, but to make sure that, because people, they want to change every font, they want to put many colors, they don't have like and I include myself because I don't know anything about design, but I had a chance to work with enough designers to understand all this. And one of the things that I found interesting, so to be honest, I think like right now Softr really has the right balance, as you say. But one of the things leads me to something else. Softr is, I would say, like, I feel like you're targeting, like, the usage you want for Softr is internal tools.
That's correct.
Which makes sense. And for instance, in terms of design, has different targets. I mean, because then it's okay to have less customization, I think, when you're building an internal tool. But for what I've seen, at least in the no-code community, Softr always had a lot of people who want to build things, to launch products with that, with Softr, to build things for their, I don't know, side projects. And I think the reason is that because Softr is the most accessible tool. It's the one that has managed to stay simple over time. But then it's hard not to balance the expectations from those two group of builders.
Yes, that's very good observation. So our ideal customer is the business person in a team that is in a marketing team, sales, and so on, that, as you rightly mentioned, builds either internal tools or tools that are working between them and their clients, partners, vendors. So it could be internal and external facing. And you are right, it's probably one of the most accessible tools, and we get a lot of people who have side ideas and they build like SaaS products and they sell courses and stuff like that. So those are use cases that platform allows to do, but those are not the use cases that we optimize long term. Like, for example, Stripe is adding a lot more new functionalities. We are not very quick adapting to those new features. But if you're building something that sells something to others, so you might want to be very active in adopting new payment methods and so on. Definitely. Because the use case doesn't match, we don't invest a lot into that. However, still it's possible. So especially if people want less kind of black box like AI generated code, but want a mixture of AI and and no code, they could still use Softr and build some of those. However, it's not primary the use case of the platform.
But we'll come back on the AI because it's true. Like it's all a matter of limits.
Yeah.
And with the accessibility comes also limits in what you can build. But I've seen and I've met so many, and there are people here at the No Code Week that have been so creative, like pushing back those limits, working with like some of the functionalities and things. But now it can go even further. But before going into that last part, because it's the final kind of evolution, do you have some usage that you were surprised with Softr, people have built that are a bit that you didn't expect, that you found interesting or funny?
Yeah, so one was that we discovered that a lot of technical teams are building also with Softr, like especially that we have REST API and SQL databases. So they build tools for even sometimes themselves and sometimes for their, like let's say customer support team. Many times they might need to pull up customer data, which usually lives in production SQL databases and so on. So those are usually, tools that you need to, development team was in the past building, and with Softr, they can now connect to a database with permissions, expose those, and give visibility to support teams. So this was an interesting use case that we discovered, and surprising that many times from our partners we learn like how many big companies are using Softr, like very, very big, I don't know, TED being one, like the big conference using it, MIT and others. Like there's a lot of big companies and institutions and governments that use that often, because we are like very small team and we are not like sales driven, which we try over the coming months to also a bit do sales approach to sell to the bigger companies. We get surprised when we see so many big players are using Softr.
Yeah, it's interesting since it's all like usually like more internal. People might be using it, you just don't see it from the outside, but then it's like a company has like some very specific
yes, surprising use case was Google. I think Google is I'm not sure like if still they are using it, but like they had a lot of use cases within Softr, and then sometimes they would upload their organizational chart. Is like Google has a lot of people like employees, right? So we had this organizational chart block which is showing your entire like org chart, like and they had, I don't know, what is it, 100,000 or so. They uploaded it, and
the entire
it was,
one.
And it was very challenging, and that was also an interesting thing because usually like our blocks are well tested and working well, and their 100,000 like organizational chart was rendering very well, and that was like, oh my god, this works, like this is crazy, like so many people in the canvas.
It's one of like Google hasn't built or even tried not to do something that would be similar than Softr. They have app sheets, but I don't think anyone is using it now.
Yeah, I think they acquired that company, I think. Then the founder left, if I recall it. And sometimes, big companies do these side projects or acquire them and they're not good at integrating and it just disappears. Google also did Airtable alternative called Google Tables, but I think they killed it over time. So.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, this I think stayed as an experiment. They don't even...
Exactly.
But it's... okay, and so let's get to the topic of the moment. There is a lot to say, and you just did a presentation about also like kind of like where no code is right now, where it's going, the impact of AI. What's your first, if we follow like the chronology, in 2023 with the beginning of generative AI, what did you think about this? What did you expect would be the impact? Or
Yep. So first, when it came, a lot of us were using it as like a data retrieval system. Sort of, you would, instead of asking in Google, you would actually research things and ask questions in a chat window, and you get it. And that was like already like very impressive. But then fast forward like a couple of months from there, I think that was OpenAI that allowed to do like structured outputs, like we were able to already generate like JSONs and so on. That was like the moment that it clicked that we could actually use this also within products and not only for text generation. And I think we were one of the first ones that did these mini projects. I think back then, maybe it was 2024. We had an offsite and we did quick hackathon where we created simple builder that you would again kind of prompt your idea and it would actually create a simple application for you. It wasn't like using the full power of platform, but it was already creating something. But that was, I think when I look at it back, was impressive, but also a bit early. So that was like too early for such a thing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it took time. And so maybe before we talk about how you integrated all this and how it made the product evolve, what do you think about vibe coding? I'd say, which would be, I'm not talking about developers using AI, although I'd be curious also to know in the technical team if you guys use it, but what's your, since 2024, many people have been building apps just by prompting an LLM in the context of Cursor or Claude Code or whatever.
Yeah, it's definitely very impressive. And I think the tools like Cursor and Cloud Code are a little bit more targeted towards tech crowd.
Yes.
But if you think about some of other players that are more cloud-based vibe coding
platforms, it would be more the equivalent because if people have to install things, to have their own execution environment, this is too complicated. But let's say, cloud-based, so cloud-based, equivalent of no-code.
So the vibe coding, that allows people to easily kind of create good looking, I don't know, like the first version of something. Like many times it's a website, many times it's a dashboard that is less often, backed by real data, but like impressive demo and so on. I think it allowed a lot of use cases. I think many people are able to push the limits forward and really connect to external systems and build something and reprompt their way out of like somewhat working application. But I still think especially for our target type of users, like business users, many of them are struggling because the vibe coding itself is an interface you talk to and the outcome is code and the outcome is some UI and then in between there's a code. And that code is something that usually they don't understand. And if something is kind of broken, you keep reprompting, and many times when you reprompt, you fix something else breaks because that's just the nature of LLMs. Like they are not really pinpointing always the right problem to solve. They are touching more things. It's like you can't really control all of the details of it, and
they don't really understand the whole code base of a project.
Yes, that's one thing. Also, your intent. Like it's naive to expect that we human beings are able to very clearly articulate our intent. So there's like this fun thing when even software building, you have the UX, product person, and engineer. Like why do we have all these layers? Because someone is translating something from one layer to another, and now we connect the business person right to the code generation, kind of piping it together. And there's a lot of misunderstanding, like what you prompt, and the code is generated. So a lot of those people don't understand what it is and how it works. They keep reprompting and it creates something very impressive. But I don't think it's a level of thing that many companies confidently deploy into the production environment and use as a company, because it has ton of security, reliability issues and so on. And it's still a challenging problem to solve.
Yeah, it's something that was very interesting in this morning talks, both in yours and also in the one from Sebastian from Make, is the notion of platform. Running, like the environment. That's what non-technical people don't understand. It's like writing the code is not even half of the job. It's just part of it. It's like one part. One part also is understanding what you're supposed to do, but one part is doing. And then once you have the code and you manage to run it in a test environment, then you have to put it in production. And then no one on LinkedIn talks about that. No one, that's one of the things that's so frustrating for me, coming from a technical background, but also a user and convinced user of no-code tools. Like no-code tools have solved this issue. It's like you bring the platform, you bring the security, the scalability, which you don't get.
Yeah, so you have a very good point. Like we always get frustrated from this X and LinkedIn posts, and like surprisingly, like people that firsthand work with LLMs and do a lot of professional work with it know the limits and know how much time and effort they spend to build the logic around LLMs to make it like usable, like, right? So, and then someone comes in LinkedIn and says like, I replaced my entire team with AI.
Yeah.
It's all just, I think, buzz. It's like detached from reality. Many times I also find myself like checking out the profile of that person, and it like often they don't do professionally those things. They just talk, and then they sell courses. So I think if you really want to see what's going on, you need to come to events like this, and or go to, I don't know, meetups and so on, and learn from firsthand people that really do it. And it's impressive, but it's not what we see in LinkedIn.
Yeah, definitely. And as you said, there is this it's a bit of magic that you can really quickly get something that looks good and it pushes back the limits. And so this brings us to like the I would say the merge of no code and AI. Sometimes I like to call it vibe no coding. Some people also are using this term. So can you tell us now how people can build things in Softr? What are the options? So there is still everything that you were doing is still available, of course, but there are new ways.
Yes, absolutely. So I also think that it's a little bit not correct to differentiate no code and AI from each other. I think now a lot of systems will be like AI native or AI driven, and no code and AI for me is more or less like very like interconnected terms. And when we look at the software, so we always had like we started when the AI wasn't there, obviously, in that level that we see today, and we were allowing this visual building, right? So then AI came in, and we adopted a lot of AI functionalities into software. So one problem that we solve is this cold start problem. So I think if someone just joins software, like they have databases now, workflows, interfaces, so there are two types of people, some that just curious, try out and learn, and then there are others that are impatient and they want to actually quick results now, especially with AI. So now Softr is like full AI kind of platform as well in a way, and you can prompt like, I want a client portal where I do like influencer marketing, and clients are influencers and I need the kind of application to work with them. It will build a working application from get-go, and it will save you like a couple of days of work, and it will do it in 5 minutes. But then the difference like is that it's built on the platform, on the primitives that we actually as a platform already had. So it doesn't generate authentication code all the time. It doesn't generate Kanban block all the time, and the organizational chart that can support 100,000 people and so on. So it's using the primitives that we have in the platform and builds on top of those. However, if you really also want to go into like create something custom, which I really, really like, is this Vibe no coding platform, no coding block that we have. Yeah, exactly. That allows you to be very focused, like in this particular section of my application, I want something very custom. And then you go and prompt it, and you get also very something with code created right there, which is obviously code is way more flexible and you can do a lot of stuff the way you want. And this customization problem is solved there to a degree. And you can create, and the good thing is it doesn't interfere with the rest of the system. So it can't break your authentication just because you prompted something wrong. It's going to do something in that particular area, and it's going to generate code. But the additional thing that we add on top is when code is generated, so you have still this visual control. So you click on the next tab, you actually set the permissions. Okay, let's say you created some custom Gantt chart, and so there are projects that you don't want certain user types, certain user groups to see. Like what do? You just click on the next tab. You can prompt and it will still do it, but you can also click on the next tab to see what it did. So is this permission correct? Or if not, then you can also manually correct it, or again type and then it will do it for you. So I think this is like really important key, because you as a non-technical person, you are not guessing actually, who's going to do that. You actually can check and see, and it's talking to you in the language that you are very familiar.
It's all about context also, like having this module that is very specific, so that is being vibe coded, but inside the context, it runs in something. You don't have to build everything around it. The rest can be built visually, but you have this. It can connect to the data.
Exactly.
And to the workflows as well, I think.
Yes.
So it's like it can benefit from all the functionalities.
Exactly.
And properties also can be configured visually.
Exactly.
So it means if you're because I guess often there are people who are more technical building, but then sometimes there's the manager who also wants to come over the app and maybe change a few things. So he doesn't want to touch technical part, but still have the visual.
Yeah,
So.
exactly. You have a very good point. Like oftentimes software building is not like a solo play, like you are not building it alone. So you have a team. Now imagine if one person prompts something, another person prompts something else. So here at least you have the usual, like a visual kind of, way of also for certain people that are not less familiar, they can change the software is actually more confidently, because software building is part of problem maintaining and making it reliable, and the change management is like a big part of it.
Yeah,
so
maintenance is also something you don't see on LinkedIn, but is part of the real part of the job of a software engineer.
Exactly.
And this also is in a way solved or helped with no-code platforms. Okay, that's really cool. Just to finish, can you give us a glimpse of the future, maybe? Some things you would like to share? What's coming up?
So we are working on a couple of very exciting topics. First, few things are already there, so I will just mention them so that some of you folks can also try it out. So first of all, this vibe coding block now supports multi-data sources within single block.
Okay.
So your block, because you are like it's generating code, it could just generate like a very comprehensive dashboard, and you can actually already put some mini chart like from HubSpot and something from Salesforce, etc. So you can really attach multiple data sources to a single vibe coding block, and it will just
That's interesting. Yeah, we were mentioning earlier that this is one of the
why it's relevant. Second one is we made every single app now with one toggle turns into MCP. So imagine you have in the app like I don't know, in the company like HR application or I don't know, client facing application. So and if you are like really technical and you work with Cloudy a lot or OpenAI, ChatGPT and so on, you can connect it as a connector to this app
for the data.
For the data as well, but every app as well. So like, because the beauty of app is like you as a user of app have certain permissions, right? So let's say you're an employee and it's an HR app where you can book vacation and you can see your team availability. So now it's one way that you can go into the interface and you can actually check that and book that. Another way that you can just, voice or type it, say, hey, like, first week of August, I want to be on vacation. Can you book it for me? And it will, if you're connected the app as an MCP for you, it will act on your behalf as your app user and it will do that work for you.
Okay, interesting.
So that's just another interface of like having a reliable app on the back, but you still interacted through different means, different interface. So that's, I think, very, very cool. And this is actually very interesting one because you mentioned the data, right? We have database MCP as well, but we believe that's more for builders, right?
So because
they
I
can
understand the difference now,
and the security and governance is very important. So that's why the app MCP is very good because you have users groups, permissions. You really go field by field level, who can do what.
Yeah, you rely on the authentication and permissions of the app to go through the MCP.
Exactly, yes.
Okay, that's very interesting.
So that's already available, can be tried. And the next thing we want to do is agents within applications and within software platform. It is similar that you could, for example, build onboarding agent in your HR application when new employee starts. So instead of them figuring out all the details or just going through emails and do so, imagine there's an HR app and there's also a window inside app that is an agent. So you can talk and get all the instructions and always be asking questions and getting things done and so on. Every app could be have an agent or multiple agents attached to the app, supporting the business use cases within the apps.
Okay, that's super interesting. Do you have plans for the builders for an MCP that would allow people to build from Claude, for instance?
That is in long term.
A lot of people want to do that. Some people are doing that with Make or N8N.
Yes.
I don't really see the point, to be honest, because I feel like it's better to build in the app, but...
Yeah, so the first step in that direction was the database one.
Yes.
So we gave the database MCP because some of the builders were asking, like they want to just build from the Cloudy. I think the next step will be allowing a vibe coding block to be connected to Cloudy as well, so that you can generate your code basically from other systems and connect it to Softr. So the code doesn't necessarily need to be just generated inside Softr platform, but can be generated there and then pushed into a Softr platform. And then we have a versioning and all that there, so you don't need to care. But generation could happen outside, so that's the second one. And then the third one will be workflows as an MCP. I think there's a bit of trend toward that as well. And app building is a bit more complex. That's at the very end. We are not yet sure we need to enable that because it's, I think, smaller group that wants it. Like,
yeah, I agree.
A lot of ICPs.
Yeah, it's that's the thing. That's why, because I mean, you just have to log in Softr, then you have the conversation, and you can do exactly the same. I mean, you don't do it in the context of your own cloud, and I understand why people want to do that because they have everything connected to cloud, and so. But I think honestly, it's
one thing we might do earlier than the building, which we think might be the case, is when you have a complex application, and sometimes people have like hundreds of pages and a lot of logic and a lot of users and permissions, so they might want to use MCPs or cloud connectors and other connectors to understand the big picture. So like instead of building, like saying, hey, can you tell me like who has access to this page or this blog and so on, like, and you might, because if you do that in UI, you might need to go and do a lot of clicks. So we will solve that in two ways. So we'll probably do read-only MCP first to just get that insights, and second, similar to the make grid that make guys did. So in Softr we also work on high-level abstractions to click and just see what's going on, like,
for supervision, monitoring.
And also like cool feature that is there is impersonating, right? So as you builder, when you are building, you know, you have 100 users, so, and you have like admins and let's say employees and managers. Sometimes you just want to click and see how is admin seeing this application, how is manager seeing, how is employee seeing. That's also a good thing the way to test for you and get the real details how things are working.
Okay. Super interesting. Well, I'm looking forward to all this. Thank you again for this conversation. That was really great to have a chance to have all the backstory and all the evolutions. So thank you so much for that.
Sure. Thank you, Alexis, as well. Thanks for having me. Excited for the future.
Thanks.